The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime sparkled under the light of 3 different suns. Inside the great hall, creatures from across the galaxy sat in perfect silence. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking trees. But all of them shared one thing: they knew this day was important. The Galactic Council met only once every 100 years. Today was special because they would read the Elder Protocols. These were warnings written by the oldest and wisest races in the galaxy. Races so ancient that most people thought they were just stories. Admiral Zex Thara shifted in his seat. His gray skin reflected the crystal walls around him. The Vorthak people were proud warriors. They had conquered 17 star systems in just 100 years. Their ships were as big as small moons. Their weapons could break apart entire planets. To Zex Thara, sitting here listening to old warnings felt like a waste of time. The Keeper stood at the center of the hall. It was so old that nobody knew what species it had been originally. Its body was more machine than flesh. Now, tubes and wires kept it alive. Its voice sounded like wind through broken glass. We gather to remember the wisdom of those who came before us, the Keeper said. The elders saw the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They learned which paths led to peace and which led to destruction. Their warnings have kept our galaxy safe for millions of years. Zex Thara looked around the hall. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat listening. Most of them looked bored, some were even sleeping. Only the very old races seemed to pay attention. The young species like the Vorthak had never seen what the elders warned about. To them, these protocols were just old superstitions. The Keeper began reading from a crystal tablet that glowed with soft light. Protocol 7, never disturb the sleeping worlds of the Zephyrine cluster. Their dreams can drive entire fleets mad. Protocol 12, avoid the machine worlds. Beyond the Veil Nebula, they turn all organic life into spare parts. Each warning told of some terrible danger hidden in the dark corners of space. Most of the locations mentioned were already well-known danger zones. Ships avoided them automatically. But then the Keeper's voice changed. It became more serious, more frightened. Protocol 17, the Keeper said, and the hall became completely silent. Even the sleeping representatives woke up. In the third spiral arm of our galaxy, there is a yellow star. Around this star orbits a world of blue and green. This world is beautiful and full of life. On this world lives a species that calls itself human. Zex Thara leaned forward. He had never heard this warning before. His military maps showed the third spiral arm as mostly empty space. A few small colonies, nothing important. These humans must never be disturbed. The Keeper continued. They sleep now, bound to their single world by the limits of their technology. They fight small wars among themselves. They know nothing of the greater galaxy. This is as it should be. This is how it must remain. The Admiral frowned. A species that fought among itself sounded weak, not dangerous. What could primitive world-bound creatures do to threaten the mighty hegemony fleet? The Keeper's voice grew even more serious. Should the humans wake? Should they learn to travel between the stars? Should they discover they are not alone? Then the galaxy will change forever. They are not like other species. They do not know when to stop fighting. They do not know when to accept defeat. They turn every loss into a lesson, and every lesson into a weapon. Whispers started around the hall. Some representatives had heard fragments of this warning before. The older species nodded their heads. Sadly, they knew something the younger races did not. The humans have a word. The keeper said, they call it spite. It means to do something harmful just because you are angry, even if it hurts. You too. The humans will fight impossible battles. Out of spite, they will die rather than kneel. And worst of all, they will make others want to fight impossible battles too. Zexthara wanted to laugh but did not dare. In the sacred hall, this sounded like fear-mongering from weak species. The Vorthak had conquered races that sounded far more dangerous. What could one primitive world do against an empire that controlled a quarter of the galaxy? The elders who wrote this warning lived through the last time humans woke up. The keeper said they saw civilizations that had existed for millions of years crumble in decades. They saw the greatest empires in galactic history reduced to dust and memory, not through conquest but through something far worse, through revolution. The ancient creature paused and looked around the hall. Its mechanical eyes seemed to focus on each representative. In turn, when those eyes met Zexthara's gaze, the Admiral felt a chill run down his spine. The humans teach other species to want freedom, the keeper said. They spread ideas like disease, ideas about rights and dignity, and the worth of individual life. Once these ideas take hold, no amount of force can stop them. The humans do not just fight wars, they fight for beliefs. And beliefs, once awakened, never go back to sleep. The keeper raised the crystal tablet high above its head. Therefore, by the wisdom of the elders and the safety of all life in the galaxy, let it be known, Sector 7742 is forbidden. No ship shall travel there. No message shall be sent there. The world called Earth shall remain unknown to us, and we shall remain unknown to them. This is not cruelty, this is mercy. Ceremony continued with other warnings. But Zexthara stopped listening. His military mind was already working. Earth, they called it, a single world in Sector 7742. His scouts could reach it in 3 months. His conquest fleets could be there in 6. The Admiral thought about the resources a pristine world might hold, the potential slaves from a population of billions, the glory of bringing an entirely new species into the hegemony empire. All of this could be his if he was brave enough to ignore the superstitious fears of the ancient races. Died as the ceremony ended and the representatives began to leave. Zexthara made his decision. The elders were dead. Their warnings came from a time when technology was primitive and travel between stars was slow. The modern hegemony fleet was unstoppable. What harm could one backward world possibly do to his mighty empire? It would soon find out. 3 months after the council meeting, Admiral Zexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Dominion. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the swirling colors of hyperspace rushing past. Soon they would reach the forbidden sector. Soon he would see what the elders had been so afraid of. The Admiral had not told the council about his mission. He had filed false reports claiming his fleet was conducting routine patrols near the Galactic Rim. Only his most trusted officers knew their real destination. They were excited about the prospect of easy conquest and the riches that would follow. The admiral called his scout commander. Vexel, we are dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. Zexthara nodded. His advanced scouts had already been to the Earth system twice. Their reports had been almost disappointing. The humans had barely achieved faster than light communication. Their ships were slow and clumsy, powered by chemical reactions instead of proper fusion cores. They had not even colonized their neighboring worlds properly. The humans appear to be a state of constant low-level warfare. Vexel had reported they divide themselves into over 200 separate nations. They fight over patches of dirt and sources of liquid fuel. Their most powerful weapons can only destroy cities, not continents. A single hegemony dreadnought could control their entire planet. The swirling colors of hyperspace suddenly snapped into the black of normal space. Before them hung a yellow star, smaller and dimmer than the suns that powered the hegemony home worlds. Around it orbited several rocky planets and gas giants. The third planet from the star glowed, blue and white and green. There it is, Zexthara said, the world the elders feared so much. Earth looked beautiful from space. White clouds swirled over blue oceans and green-brown continents. It reminded the admiral of vacation, worlds where rich hegemony citizens went to relax. Nothing about it seemed threatening or dangerous. Admiral, the communications officer, reported, we are detecting multiple radio transmissions from the planet. The humans appear to be broadcasting entertainment and news to each other. They have not noticed our arrival yet. Zexthara had brought 50 dreadnoughts for this mission. Each ship was 10 km long and carried enough firepower to level mountain ranges. His total force included nearly 1,000,000 hegemony soldiers. It was overkill for conquering a single primitive world, but the admiral wanted to be thorough. Begin the standard conquest protocol. He ordered, move the fleet into orbit around their planet. Prepare the surrender demand in their primitive languages. The massive hegemony ships moved slowly toward Earth. Their hulls were dark metal decorated with the skull symbols of the Empire. Weapon ports along their sides could unleash devastating energy beams. Each ship was large enough to be seen from the planet's surface, even in daylight. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, we are detecting movement from the human settlements. Their military forces appear to be mobilizing. Zexthara looked at the tactical display. Tiny blips of light showed human aircraft rising from their continents. Small orbital stations were changing course to intercept the hegemony fleet. It looked like someone had kicked in anthill. They move quickly, Vexahel observed, but their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their projectile weapons are barely more advanced than throwing rocks. The admiral smiled. At least the humans had some fighting spirit. It would make the conquest more interesting than simply landing on empty world. His soldiers needed practice anyway. Open a channel to the planet, Zexthara commanded. Let us give them the chance to surrender. The communication array activated, broadcasting on all human frequencies. The admiral's translators had prepared the message in what the computer claimed were the three most common human languages. People of Earth, the message began. You are now under the authority of the Hegemony Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You will surrender all military forces immediately. Your governments will dissolve. Your populations will be relocated to designated work zones. Resistance is futile and will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. You have one rotation of your planet to comply with these terms. For several minutes there was no response from Earth. The Admiral wondered if the humans were too primitive to understand what was happening. Perhaps they thought the massive alien fleet was some kind of natural phenomena. Then the reply came. It was broadcast on every frequency the humans possessed, in dozens of languages from every nation on the planet. The response was simple and direct. Go to hell. Zexthara blinked in surprise. That was not the usual response to a surrender demand. Most species tried to negotiate or ask for more time. Some begged for mercy. None had ever told him to go to hell. Admiral Vexahil said, the human military forces are taking positions around the planet. They appear to be preparing for battle. The Admiral looked at the tactical display again. The human response was more organized than he had expected. Their aircraft were forming attack groups. Their orbital stations had armed their primitive weapon systems. Even their civilian communications networks had switched to military frequencies. How long until they can mount any kind of meaningful resistance? Zexthara asked. Based on their current technology, the tactical officer replied, they would need several years to develop weapons that could threaten our ships. Their current arsenals are completely inadequate. But something strange was happening on the planet below. The Admiral watched as the human nations that had been fighting each other just hours before began working together. Ancient enemies shared intelligence. Rival military forces coordinated their movements. It was as if the arrival of the hegemony fleet had flipped a switch in the human mind. Sir, the communications officer reported, we are detecting massive changes in human industrial production. Their factories are retooling for military production at an unprecedented rate. Their research facilities are operating continuously. They appear to be sharing technology between formerly hostile nations. Zexthara frowned. This was unusual but not threatening. Even if the humans worked together perfectly, they could not overcome the technological gap in just 24 hours. Their chemical rockets could barely reach their own moon. His dreadnoughts could destroy continents. Maintain position, the Admiral ordered. Let them waste their time preparing. When their deadline expires, we will demonstrate the futility of resistance by destroying one of their major cities. That should convince them to surrender. But as the hours passed, something began to worry the Admiral. The humans were not acting like other species facing conquest. They were not panicking or fleeing or begging for mercy. Instead, they seemed to be getting more organized and more determined with each passing hour. Human military leaders appeared on their broadcast network speaking calmly about defense preparations. Human scientists worked openly on new weapon designs. Human civilians volunteered for military service in numbers that made no sense. It was as if the entire species had declared war on his empire. Admiral Vexahil said quietly, "Perhaps we should reconsider this operation. The humans are not behaving normally. Maybe the elder warnings contained some truth after all." Zexthara turned on his subordinate with anger. "Are you suggesting that 50 dreadnoughts cannot handle one primitive world? Are you saying the mighty hegemony should run away from creatures who still use chemical explosives?" Vexahil backed down quickly, but the admiral noticed that other officers on the bridge were watching the human preparations with growing unease. The planet below was transforming itself into a fortress with impossible speed and efficiency. The 24-hour deadline approached. Soon the admiral would have to make good on his threat. Soon the humans would learn that resistance was indeed futile. But Zexthara could not shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The humans acted like they knew something he did not. They prepared for war like they expected to win. That was impossible. But it was also exactly what the elders had warned about. The 24-hour deadline had passed. Admiral Zexthara stood ready to demonstrate hegemony power by destroying one of the larger human cities. He had chosen a place called New York, which seemed to be some kind of trade center. One blast from his flagship's main cannon would turn the entire area into molten glass. Admiral, his communications officer, announced, "We are receiving a transmission from Earth. It appears to be from their military leaders." "Put it on the main screen," Zexthara ordered. He wanted to see the human faces when they realized their time for surrender had run out. The image that appeared showed a room full of human military officers. They wore different uniforms and spoke different languages, but they all had the same expression. They looked calm and determined, not at all like a species about to face extinction. One human stepped forward. He was older than the others, with gray hair and hard eyes. When he spoke, translators' computers rendered his words into hegemony standard. "I am General Harrison, speaking for the Unified Military Command of Earth," the human said. "We have reviewed your surrender demands. After careful consideration, we must decline your generous offer." Several hegemony officers laughed. The human sarcasm was obvious even through the translation. But Zexthara did not find it funny. Something about the general's tone suggested he was not bluffing. Furthermore, General Harrison continued, "We would like to make a counteroffer. You have 24 hours to leave our solar system. If you remain after that time, we will consider you hostile invaders and act accordingly." The bridge of the Iron Dominion fell silent. The humans were threatening them. A primitive species with chemical rockets was threatening the hegemony empire. "Are they insane?" Vexahil whispered. "Perhaps," Zexthara replied. "But insanity can be cured with firepower. Target the largest human city. Prepare to fire." But as his gunners prepared to destroy New York, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The admiral looked at his tactical display and felt his heart skip a beat. Thousands of small objects were rising from Earth's surface. They looked like the humans' primitive rockets, but there were far too many of them. The planet seemed to be launching its entire space program at once. "What are those?" The Admiral demanded. Analyzing now, sir, the sensor officer replied. His face went pale as the data came in. Admiral, those are not normal rockets. The humans have attached nuclear warheads to everything they could launch. Satellite, space probes, civilian rockets. They have turned their entire aerospace industry into weapons. Zexar watched in amazement as hundreds of improvised missiles streaked toward his fleet. Nuclear weapons were primitive by hegemony standards. They could not penetrate his ship, shields, or damage his hull. But the sheer number of them was impressive. Sir, the tactical officer reported. Nuclear devices are not targeting our ships directly. They appear to be detonating in a grid pattern around the fleet. The Admiral frowned. That made no sense. Nuclear explosions in space would not damage his vessels. Why would the humans waste their weapons on empty space? Then his communication systems went dead. The electromagnetic pulses from hundreds of nuclear explosions had created an interference field around the entire fleet. His ships could no longer talk to each other or coordinate their movements. Clever, Vexar admitted. They have blinded us. But it changes nothing. We can still destroy their world. But the human attack was just beginning. As the hegemony fleet tried to reestablish communications, new contacts appeared on their sensors. These were larger than the first wave of missiles. They moved faster and followed stranger paths through space. Admiral, the sensor officer called out. Those appear to be modified human orbital stations. They have strapped rockets to their space habitats and are using them as ram ships. Zexar could not believe what he was seeing. The humans had turned their space colonies into massive kinetic weapons. The stations were not large enough to seriously damage a dreadnought, but they were moving at incredible speed. Any ship they hit would feel the impact. And sir, the officer continued, there are more launches from the planet. Much larger this time. The Admiral watched as new objects rose from Earth. These were clearly military vessels, but they looked wrong. Instead of the sleek lines of proper warships, they appear to be chunks of metal welded together at random. They bristled with weapons that seemed to have been copied from hegemony designs. How is that possible? Zexar demanded. They had no access to our technology until yesterday. Sir, Vexar said quietly. Remember that our advanced scouts made 2 reconnaissance trips to this system. The humans may have detected those visits and captured some of our sensor data. The Admiral stared at his subordinate. Are you suggesting that these primitives reverse-engineered hegemony technology? In 3 months, it appears they have done exactly that. Sir, the first human warship reached weapons range and immediately opened fire. The energy beams that lanced out from its crude weapon ports were clearly based on hegemony designs. But something was wrong with them. They were more powerful than they should be and fired much faster. How are they generating that much energy? The tactical officer asked in amazement. Those power readings are impossible for ships that size. Unknown, sir. But they appear to have modified our weapon design significantly. The beam intensity is nearly triple normal parameters. More human ships reached the battle zone. Each one looked different from the others. Each one fired weapons that bent the rules of physics in ways that made hegemony engineers nervous. These were not ships built according to proper specifications. They were improvised, modified, and improved by minds that refused to accept limitations. Admiral, the communications officer, reported, "We are receiving another message from the human general." General Harrison's face appeared on the screen again. This time he was clearly standing on the bridge of one of the human warships. The background showed a chaotic mix of jury-rigged equipment and improvised control systems. "We warned you to leave," the general said calmly. "Since you have chosen to stay, we will demonstrate why the elders told you not to wake us up." The human fleet attacked with tactics that made no sense by normal military standards. Instead of maintaining formation and engaging at long range, they split into small groups and attacked from all directions at once. Some ships rammed directly into hegemony vessels. Others used their crude weapons to target specific systems rather than trying to destroy entire ships. They are not trying to win a traditional battle, Vexar observed. They are trying to learn how our ships work. The admiral realized his subordinate was right. Every human attack seemed designed to gather information rather than cause maximum damage. They were treating this battle like a research opportunity. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "the humans have boarded the dreadnought Iron Claw. They are fighting in the corridors." "Impossible. How did they breach the hull?" "They did not breach it, sir. They landed their ships in the docking bay and walked in through the airlocks. Our automated systems let them in because their ship configurations did not match any known hostile designs." Zexar wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but the situation was becoming serious. The humans had turned his own security systems against them. They were fighting a war unlike anything in the hegemony military manuals. "Admiral," another officer reported, "we have lost contact with 5 dreadnoughts. The humans appear to have captured them intact." "Captured? How do you capture a ship with a crew of 10,000? "Unknown, sir. But we are detecting hegemony energy signatures from those vessels. They appear to be under human control. For the first time since the battle began, Admiral Zexar felt real fear. These were not the primitive savages his scouts had described. These were something else entirely. Something that learned from every mistake and turned every weakness into strength. The humans were not just fighting his fleet. They were studying it, improving on it, and making it their own. And they were doing it all in the middle of battle, as if warfare and research were the same thing to them. The admiral finally understood what the elders had been warning about. The humans did not just fight wars. They evolved during them. 6 months after the first battle, Admiral Zexar stood in a prison cell on what had once been his flagship. The Iron Dominion was still in Earth orbit, but it no longer served the hegemony empire. Human technicians had stripped out entire sections and rebuilt them with improvements that made his best engineers weep. Through the small window, the admiral could see other ships in the growing human fleet. Some were captured hegemony vessels, modified beyond recognition. Others were entirely new designs that combined human creativity with alien technology. All of them bore the same symbol, a blue and white circle representing the Earth. They had come from the door to his cell opened and General Harrison walked in. The human looked older than he had during their first communication. Leading a war against a galactic empire had aged him, but his eyes still held the same determined fire. Admiral Harrison said, sitting across from him at the small table. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you," Zexar replied. "You have already taken everything." "Not everything. We still need information about other hegemony worlds, other species under your control, other places where beings are suffering under imperial rule." The admiral laughed bitterly. "You think you can challenge the entire hegemony? You have defeated one small fleet. My empire controls a quarter of the galaxy. You are still just one primitive world." Harrison pulled out a data pad and showed him recent intelligence reports. "Actually, we are not alone anymore. 3 star systems have already declared independence from your empire. They are using weapon designs we shared with them. 2 more have asked for our help in overthrowing their hegemony governors." In disbelief. "That is impossible. Those worlds have been under our control for centuries. Their populations are completely pacified." "Were pacified," the general corrected, "until they learned that someone had successfully fought back against the hegemony and won. Until they realized that your empire was not as invincible as you claimed. Until they discovered that resistance was possible." The admiral's mind raced as he processed what this meant. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had broadcast the victory across the galaxy. Every oppressed world now knew that the hegemony could be beaten. "What do you want from me?" Zexthara asked. "We want you to help us free the other species under hegemony control," Harrison said. "We want you to contact your commanders and order them to stand down. We want you to help us end this empire peacefully." "And if I refuse?" Harrison's expression grew serious. "Then we will end it ourselves. But it will take longer and more beings will suffer while we work our way through your territory system by system." The general activated his data pad again and showed the admiral something that made his blood run cold. It was a star map showing human fleet movements. In 6 months, they had gone from a single world to controlling a dozen star systems. Their expansion rate was accelerating. "How?" Zexthara whispered. "How did you build fleets so quickly?" "We did not build them," Harrison explained. "We liberated them. Every world we free contributes ships, resources, and people to our cause. Every species we help joins our alliance willingly. Your former subjects are fighting harder for freedom than your soldiers ever fought for empire." The admiral studied the tactical information more carefully. The human strategy was unlike anything in military history. Instead of conquering territory, they were liberating it. Instead of demanding tribute, they were offering aid. Instead of ruling through fear, they were leading through inspiration. "The Vorthek High Command will never surrender," Zexthara said. "They will fight to the last ship rather than accept defeat." "We know," Harrison replied. "That is why we are not asking them to surrender. We are asking them to join us." "Join you? You are insane. The Vorthek are a warrior race. We have conquered 17 systems. We do not serve others." Harrison smiled. We are not asking you to serve us. We are asking you to serve something greater than any single species. Idea that all beings have the right to be free. The general stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships from a dozen different species worked together on a massive construction project. Former enemies labored side by side to build something new. Do you know what that is? Harrison asked, pointing to the construction site. Some kind of space station, the admiral guessed. A hospital ship, the general corrected. The largest medical facility ever built. It will travel to worlds devastated by war and provide free treatment to anyone who needs it. The design came from the hegemonies, former enemies working together. The funding came from worlds you once ruled. Zexthara could not understand what he was seeing. Why would you build hospitals instead of warships? You are still fighting a war. Because this war is not about conquest. Harrison explained. It is about proving that there's a better way to live. Every hospital we build, every school we establish, every world we help rebuild, these are our real weapons against tyranny. The Admiral felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt about everything he had believed. The hegemony taught that power came from strength, that order came from fear, that peace came from conquest. But the humans were demonstrating something different. Your empire will destroy you eventually, Zexthara said. The core worlds have fleets that dwarf anything you have seen. They will not surrender like I did. We are counting on that, Harrison said. Every world that sees the hegemony's true nature will turn against it. Every species that witnesses your empire's brutality will join our cause. Your own cruelty is our best recruiting tool. The general activated his communicator and spoke to someone outside the cell. Admiral Zexthara is ready to record his statement. What statement? The Admiral demanded. The one where you tell your fellow Vorthak about what you have learned. Here, the one where you explain why resistance is not futile. The one where you give them a choice between continuing to serve an empire of fear or joining an alliance based on hope. A human technician entered with recording equipment. Zexthara realized this had all been planned. The humans had not captured him for intelligence or revenge. They had captured him to convert him. And if I refuse to make this recording, Harrison shrugged, then we will continue liberating worlds without it. But it will take longer and more beings will die while we work our way to the hegemony core worlds, including your own people. The Admiral thought about his home world, about the billions of Vorthak who had never questioned the Empire's right to rule, about the young soldiers being sent to fight a war they could not win against, an enemy they did not understand. What would you have me say? He asked finally. The truth, Harrison replied, that the humans did not conquer you. They convinced you. That strength without justice is just another form of weakness. That an empire built on fear will always fall to people fighting for something they believe in. Zexthara looked out the window again at the ships working together in space. Former slaves and former masters, building something new. Species that had hated each other for centuries finding common cause in the idea of freedom. Maybe the elders had been right to warn about humanity, but not for the reasons anyone had thought. The humans were not dangerous because they were good at war. They were dangerous because they were good at peace. The admiral sat down in front of the recording equipment and began to speak. Outside the window, more ships arrived from newly liberated worlds. The human alliance grew stronger with each passing day. The galaxy was waking up, and it would never go back to sleep. 2 years after Admiral Zexthara's first arrival at Earth, the great crystal dome of Nexus Prime hosted another emergency session of the Galactic Council. But this time the hall looked very different. Where once only the established powers had seats, now representatives from hundreds of newly free worlds filled every space. The ancient keeper still stood at the center, but it was no longer the oldest being present. Several of the elder races had emerged from hiding to witness what they called the Great Awakening. These beings had not been seen in the galaxy for millions of years, but the changes happening across the stars had drawn them out of their ancient retreats. General Harrison sat in the section reserved for new members. Beside him were representatives from dozens of species that had thrown off imperial rule past 24 months. Former slaves sat next to former masters, united by their shared commitment to the principles the humans had brought to the galaxy. Admiral Zexthara was there too, but not as a prisoner. He wore the uniform of the Free Vorthak Republic, a government that had formed after his home world voted to leave the hegemony empire. The decision had not been unanimous, but it had been decisive. Too many Vorthak had seen the recordings he sent home. Too many had heard his explanation of what freedom could mean. At the far edge of the hall, in a section surrounded by heavy security, sat the last representatives of the old hegemony core worlds. Their empire had shrunk from a quarter of the galaxy to just a few dozen systems in 2 short years. Their fleets had been destroyed not by conquest but by defection. Their soldiers had simply stopped fighting for a cause they no longer believed in. The keeper called the session to order with a voice that shook with emotion. We are here to witness the formal dissolution of the hegemony empire and the establishment of the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds. A cheer went up from most of the hall. Only the remaining hegemony representatives sat in sullen silence. They knew their time was over, but they could not understand how it had happened so quickly. One of the elder beings stepped forward. It was so ancient that it appeared to be made of living starlight. When it spoke, its words seemed to come from the cosmos itself. Young humans, the elder said, looking directly at General Harrison, you have done what we thought impossible. You have changed the galaxy not through force of arms but through force of ideas. Harrison stood and bowed respectfully. We had good teachers. The elder protocols warned everyone what would happen if humanity was awakened. We just proved that the warnings were correct. The ancient being made a sound that might have been laughter. The protocols were written to protect the galaxy from you. Instead, they protected you from premature contact. We knew this day would come eventually. We knew that once humanity learned it was not alone, it would never stop fighting for the freedom of all conscious beings. Another elder stepped forward, this one resembling a tree made of crystal. The warning spoke of revolution and the fall of empires. They spoke of humans who did not know when to stop fighting, What they did not say was that this was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Keeper nodded sadly. For too long we have allowed tyranny to exist because it was stable. We have permitted suffering because it was orderly. The humans have shown us that stability without justice is meaningless. Admiral Zixthara requested permission to speak. When it was granted, he stood and addressed the assembled representatives. I was the one who ignored the elder warnings, he said. I was the one who woke humanity from its slumber. I thought I was conquering a primitive world for the glory of my empire. Instead, I started a revolution that freed the galaxy. He paused and looked around the hall at all the species represented there. Beings who had been enemies for millennia now sat side by side, working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans taught us that freedom is not something you take, the Admiral continued. It is something you give. They could have conquered us just as easily as we tried to conquer them. Instead, they offered us a choice. The choice to be better than we were. General Harrison stood again. We want to thank everyone who helped make this moment possible. But our work is not finished. There are still species in this galaxy who suffer under tyranny. There are still beings who do not know that freedom is possible. As long as any conscious creature lives in bondage, our mission continues. A representative from the hegemony core worlds finally stood up. She was young for her species, with scales that had lost their military polish. I speak for the remaining hegemony systems, she said. We wish to join the alliance. We are tired of fighting a war we cannot win for a cause we no longer believe in. Another cheer went up from the hall. The last remnants of the greatest empire in galactic history had just surrendered, not to superior force but to superior ideals. But the biggest surprise came when the Keeper itself stepped down from its ancient podium and walked to the human section of the hall. General Harrison, it said, the Council formally offers you the position of first speaker. You would lead the Alliance in its work to bring freedom and justice to all worlds. Harrison shook his head. I am honored, but I must decline. Humans did not start this revolution to rule the galaxy. We started it to free the galaxy. The Alliance must be led by all species, working together, not by any single world or race. The ancient Keeper seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell with its mechanical features. This is exactly why the Alliance needs human leadership. Only a species that refuses power when it is offered can be trusted with power when it is necessary. In the end, the Alliance chose a rotating leadership council with representatives from all member worlds. Decisions would be made by consensus. Whenever possible, force would only be used to defend the innocent and free the oppressed. Dawn as the session ended and the representatives began to leave. One of the elders approached General Harrison privately. You realize what you have done, do you? Not, the ancient being asked. We helped some people become free. Harrison replied. You have changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization, the elder corrected. For millions of years, empires have risen and fallen through conquest and domination. You have shown that it is possible to build something based on cooperation and mutual respect. This change will echo through time itself. The general looked out through the crystal Dome at the ship's in orbit around Nexus Prime. Vessels from hundreds of worlds worked together on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. Research stations to cure diseases, exploration ships to find new worlds for species that needed homes, hospital ships to help worlds recover from the wars of the past. We just did what felt right, Harrison said. We could not stand by and watch people suffer when we had the power to help. That, the elder replied, is what makes humanity so dangerous to tyrants and so precious to the rest of us. You do not seek power for its own sake. You seek justice for everyone's sake. The galaxy has needed this lesson for a very long time. As the great crystal dome emptied, the keeper made one final entry in the elder protocols. It read, Protocol 17 Addendum. The humans have awakened as foretold. The galaxy has indeed changed forever. But this change is not the disaster we feared. It is the hope we never dared to believe possible. Let it be recorded that on this day, the Age of Empires ended and the Age of Alliance began. The sleeping giant did not just wake up. It taught the galaxy to dream of freedom. In the years that followed, that dream would spread to every corner of the galaxy. And Admiral Zixthara, the one who had disregarded the elder warnings, would spend the rest of his long life grateful that he had made the mistake that freed them all. The elders had been right. Someone should not have awakened humanity, but everyone was glad that someone had.